welcome and thanks for listening to another episode of Zero Cafe. In this episode, I talk with Morgan Legge. She's Director of Operations and Certified Partner Outreach at our longtime sponsor Convert.com. Today is not necessarily about Zero specifically, but rather about how to work together within your company. Morgan is going to tell us about the decentralized management model called Holacracy, which I personally find fascinating, and we end our session talking about how this also led to Convert applying something that's called conscious business by, for example, eliminating bias in hiring and becoming carbon positive. My name is Gideonse and welcome to Zero Cafe, the podcast where I show you the behind the scenes of optimization teams and talk with their specialists about data and human-driven optimization and implementing a culture of experimentation and validation. In case you missed it, in the previous episode I spoke on a related topic, centralized versus decentralized Zero, with Andrea Corvi from iTech Media. You can listen to that episode on the Zero Cafe website or in the podcast app you're listening with right now. This episode of Zero Cafe is made possible by our partners Content Square, Convert.com, Online Dialogue, SiteSpect, and our new sponsor, the Online Influence Institute. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 22. So Morgan, thanks for joining us. And before we dive into today's topic, we of course like to know how you ended up doing Zero-related stuff at Convert.com.
By accident.
That's always good.
That's the short answer. So it's no surprise, and I don't hide it on my LinkedIn profile. I used to be a interior architect and renovation project manager for high-value renovations. And I came to Convert originally 5 hours a week to do Holacracy implementation as a contractor. It's something I also had no experience in. But we'll dig into that. I'm sure you'll dig that out of me. So I came into this world of which I knew, I had ideas and I understood a little bit about digital marketing because I had worked in a very kind of archaic and slow-moving industry, but, understood what marketing and digital marketing did for our business. But I, didn't have a really in-depth knowledge of what that was or what it could do. And as I got further involved in Convert, because of our structure, I have taken on many, many roles and learned lots of new and exciting things and dived in a little bit to this world.
Yeah. So what are you currently using that you used before in interior design? What are you taking with to Convert?
Well, I think a lot of problem solving. I think it's when you're working in a SaaS company, and when you're working in a company that has a lot of our structure is basically to succeed, you have to have an entrepreneurial mindset. Yeah. That's a base qualification, and I have an ability to see the big picture and see the details. So for me, I can easily go in and out between the two. So I can see operationally how decisions can impact, whether it's people, whether it's product, whether it's our customers, so agencies, for example. Yeah. And I think that, that background of being able to please and be honest and cater to while moving projects forward successfully to different stakeholders and teams is a really good skill set to have. And apparently it translates really well.
Yeah, that does sound like a good skill set to have indeed. So for those of you, for the listeners that don't know, Convert has been a sponsor of the podcast for a long time now, but can you tell us a bit about what Convert does?
Sure. We're an A/B testing and personalization tool for agencies and enterprises.
Okay. Yeah.
That's the short answer.
Yeah. And the long answer?
The long answer is that we have a tool that developers love, very easy to use and customizable for, if you're inserting code. It is powerful and good value. So, that checks a lot of boxes for people who are really looking at the bottom line. Yeah. And, I think we stack up and compete really nicely with the others that I will not name.
Yeah. All those that are probably familiar to a lot of our listeners.
Yes.
So you already mentioned you don't really have a title at Convert, as no one does, but you have roles, and we'll get into why that is later on. But what are your roles? To give an idea, what are your roles at Convert?
So it's interesting. We're allowed to pick whatever role we want, whatever title we want to have to the outside world.
Yeah.
Okay. So the title I have to the outside world is Director of Operations. I think that it speaks very nicely to how I have helped to grow Convert from 5 people to now 40. We just hired 4 people in the last 3 weeks. And my roles have changed as the implementation of Holacracy has changed through the organization. So I think that the title that I give myself to the outside world is very fair and demonstrative of what the value I have. In terms of the roles that I energize now, I think I gave you the list before. There's like 9
it's quite
roles.
The list.
It is the list. It is quite a list. So I can say that I hold roles in operations, in sales and success, and in marketing. And I am the representative. It's a little bit funny. I'm actually newly assigned to be the lead link or the leader for the sales and success team. But I represent the members of the operations team in our super circle meetings.
Yeah.
So you have to, and you work in an organization like this, you really need to be able to compartmentalize and wear different hats pretty quickly. It's certainly not for everyone, but it allows me to keep my fingers in a lot of different pies and really understand what the pulse of the organization is and how to grow the business.
And you don't necessarily do A/B testing or experimentation yourself, nor is that your background. But can you tell a bit about what optimization or maybe the experimentation mindset, how does it look like at Convert itself?
Well, I think that, so one of the core tenets of our DNA is progress, not perfection. I actually have it embossed on one of my bags. And this is really a driver for everything that we do internally. So I think it's important to note that, Holacracy as a system is self-steering and self-organizing. So when we talk about optimization internally, we're really looking at the processes and the process improvements that we can leverage to make the work flow and to make the work better, to make the organization better. But at the core of all of that, because we're a remote team, I really think that empathy is the core of optimization. It means nothing to understand what your priorities are in a day or what project management tool you're using or anything like that if you can't come into your day and understand the context of what you're walking into. So this for us is really, really important. We're a 100% remote team. We're 10 time zones. We do a lot of our work asynchronously. And I think that this is becoming more kind of understandable to people in these crazy times that we're living in. They've kind of been thrust into this, so they maybe understand a little bit of what I'm talking about. We've always been a remote team. So in order for us to optimize ourselves as professionals and as role holders, we have to first practice empathy when we show up to work.
I think that's put beautifully. I mean, that's what optimizing is about, right? The empathy for the end user, how they're actually using your stuff, and empathy is really important for that one. So we're here today to talk about Holacracy and how that's implemented at Convert. So first off, for those who don't know the term, what is Holacracy?
I would say in simple terms, it's an operating system for your organization. So, we think of traditional hierarchies as pyramids. It really is a way to structure the work. It's it's an operating system. It's built into how we run Convert.
Yeah, for me, when I always try to describe it to people, it's a weird combination between being very strict on certain things but complete freedom on other things.
Correct.
Does that make sense to you? Or?
Yes, and I'm glad that you understand that differentiation, because I talk to a lot of people in this type of format, and they're like, oh, it's flat. You have no managers. They think this is kind of like we're hippies from the 70s or something. And, we, just kind of stuff happens. And the reality is that it's very clear and very formalized and very structured, but within your boundary of your role, you could do whatever you want to move the company forward. And that's very liberating.
So what are those structures that you have in place?
So, for example, I used to hold the role of HR champion, which is a role that I gave back and now kind of morphed into something else and someone else energizes it. At that time, I came up with all the hiring processes, all the ways in which, like, all the details for how we were going to find and recruit people into this new system that we were using to run Convert. And I didn't have to ask for permission for that, right? So I think that if we think about it in terms of giving people freedom to do what they know is the right thing to do, I came on board initially for this whole kind of holacracy experiment. Dennis had seen a TED talk or something like that, one of these like super inspirational things, it's like, oh my God, I need to do that. And he was at a kind of a crossroads. He'd realized that he had become the boss that he never wanted to have. He was hoarding information. He was a micromanager. He was always the bottleneck for decisions. And he realized that he didn't even want to work at the company that he had created. And there was this shift about, you need to be able to give control and decision-making to people and just trust that they're going to do the right thing. And that's, it's been certainly a process to where we are now, but that was a start for it, right? So I think that when you give someone their parameters of where they have their power and control, and just say, hey, these are our OKRs. This is where we are. This, our company information is very public internally. It's very transparent. This is where we want to be. Take us there.
SiteSpect biedt wereldwijd een unieke AB-testing, personalisatie en product recommendation oplossing. SiteSpect werkt server-side, dus zonder tags of scripts, waardoor een optimale performance gegarandeerd is. De SiteSpect-oplossing elimineert vertragingen en kans op flikkereffecten. Tevens zorgt deze aanpak ervoor dat de huidige en toekomstige browser security regels zoals ITP en ETP geen impact hebben op het AB-testen en personaliseren met SiteSpect. Voor meer informatie hierover ga je naar sitespect.com. Yeah, and I can imagine that for someone like Dennis, who's founder, co-founder of Convert, it's also it can be liberating to to not have all this responsibility, but it's also very scary, of course, right?
Absolutely.
So how does that go? Maybe you have more experience outside of Convert also, but how does it usually go? How do founders handle this? I can imagine that it can be very tricky.
Certainly tricky. I'm not going to say anything that I hear that I haven't already said to Dennis. I think when I started, we had already had the conversation to see if we could give it a go, give it a try. I did an audit to see, what was going on, what roles we had, and learning the constitution of Holacracy, which is really kind of it's the structure of how, we operate, whether it's in tactical or governance meetings, so day to day, and there were more than a handful of times you'd be like, oh, but I want to do this and I don't agree with that. And it's like, okay, but you don't own that role, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I understand that you have opinions about it, but you need to trust that you have someone who's going to make the decision that's good for the company, even if maybe it's not the decision you would have made. And it certainly takes time. It takes, I think, obviously you have to have a willingness there, right? I don't think it's anything that can be thrust on someone, but I do think that it's been very liberating for both him and his co-founder, because it allows them to spend time with their families. It allows them to spend time on projects and roles that are really important to them. And I mean, why would you start a business and want to work on a business when you have to do the stuff that you don't actually like doing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Is
there as a founder, are people listening to this podcast and that have people working for them? Is there no Holacracy? Is there no way as a founder to be able to influence anything in your company anymore besides your own roles, or how does that work?
I think I can collectively hear them either rolling their eyes or shaking, right? I think for founders, I want to be really clear. You need to nail your hiring, right? This is super, super important. You have to hire for the right qualities of people who can push back, who can lead, who can set boundaries and expectations, who can take responsibility when things go sideways, right? And who are natural learners. And then you also have to be able to give some budget, a little bit of budget to roles for them to make decisions that need to be made.
Yeah.
And I see, can they influence? One of the roles that Dennis holds in our super circle is goal gladiator. So he sets the OKRs for each quarter. And the overarching strategy for Convert, it's the lead links for each circle. So we have product and development, smooth ops, marketing, and sales and success, that then take that OKR or OKRs, depending on where we are. Mm-hmm. And it's up to them to interpret those and set metrics for them. And those leaders are the ones that set the prioritization, the defining relative priorities, and maybe some multiple strategies at the circle level. So yes, as a founder, he does have, but he doesn't have the power to tell me, hey, Morgan, you're energizing the role of lead link for sales and success. I want you to achieve this OKR by doing X, Y, and Z, and it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, he can influence your goals, but he cannot influence the way you try to reach them.
Exactly.
And for those that have no idea what we're talking about, OKRs stand for objectives and key results, and we'll definitely link to some more explanation to that in the show notes. We won't go into that right now. So you mentioned something about hiring. I want to get back to you on that in a couple of minutes. But first, as far as you already said you came on board with Convert, and Dennis wasn't happy necessarily with the situation they were at the moment. So there was a transition from non-Holacracy to Holacracy. Mm-hmm. So I can imagine that that's also challenging if you don't start out that way. So what were the biggest challenges in changing to this new way of working? I can imagine, did people leave or?
Yes, absolutely. People left. certainly, as I was defining the hiring process, there were definitely false starts in, how to hire, what to hire for, lapses on like how to fire people. And I think difficult to, there's a lot of coaching, right? One-on-one, like for me with Dennis, as well as with me with his co-founder, Claudio, with me with actual individual role holders to say, no, actually, you can make this decision. We don't operate on consensus anymore, right? Like this is kind of, if you have your own kind of autocracy here, you could do what you want. And it's scary, certainly scary, especially when you've been used to one type of management and organization. And it's also too, I think it's scary for people because we all get educated and kind of inculcated in this certain way of working and living, right? In like expectations and culture and hierarchy. And then to tell someone, hey, just throw that out the window and this is your domain. You can do what you want here, can be really scary and also very liberating, right? But it's not like we grow up in that environment, no matter where you're from, right? Some people may be more comfortable with that than others, but it's not innate.
Yeah, like I just mentioned, it's both being very strict on some things and being very liberal on other things. Mm-hmm. So I can imagine that for people are having issues with both ways. Like it's too strict right now, or it's so liberating that I actually don't know what to do anymore. Like you fall back into being really passive and you're being used to being told what to do, and that's not happening anymore.
Yeah, and there's also, I think, this kind of paralysis of choice, right? I can have so many of these options, like which one do I choose? And it's like, okay, A, B, and C are all right answers. Yeah. You just have to make a decision, and then you just on the flip side of that is that you need to take responsibility, right? So if you end up making a mistake, like we have a channel for that, it's called Fail Forward. Mm-hmm. You take a decision and it ends up like not being what you expected, then in our DNA of transparency, we expect you to own up to that. And not going to get fired for that. It's not a reason for someone to get fired. It's a learning experience. It's like that whole progress, not perfection thing that I was talking about earlier.
I assume it's not like that there's no discussion anymore in the company, right? I mean, there does need to be consensus on something that you do, but it doesn't mean there's no discussion.
You're not looking for consensus. You have consent. So you're governed by consent. So I think the difference is that, in my roles, I'll pull in people with more experience than I do, more technical expertise. Certainly, I never would pretend to be an expert in, our product, for example. I'm not an optimizer, but I could take in the input of what professionals have an experience in, and then apply that information to make decisions, right? I say you get into a dangerous place when you don't ask for it, when they kind of have this ego of, I know better, which could be a little bit dangerous, but it doesn't happen very often.
Yesterday's brainstorm was so good. I really liked Steph's idea of running that test on the call to action buttons. Making them orange will really make them stand out, don't you think?
Yeah, right. Do you want to design real A/B test winners and achieve enormous conversion uplift? Then stop brainstorming and take a scientific approach. If you can read Dutch, follow the steps in Online Invloed, the bestseller on managementbook.nl. Or enroll in the author's course and become an expert in applying proven behavioral science yourself. Go to onlineinfluence.com for more information and free downloads. And you also mentioned that Convert is completely remote. There's no office. Would you say that Holacracy and having a completely remote workforce, is that a match made in heaven or not necessarily?
I think so. It's funny. I run a monthly group that is specifically for Holacracy practitioners that are remote, and I've been running the group for, I guess, 3 years now. And I've always said that it's like such a great match, and I don't understand why more remote companies don't sign up for this.
Yeah.
I think that having this self-steering and the distributed authority model works really well, especially if you're asynchronous, right? I mentioned earlier we're like 10 time zones, 10 time zones.
Yeah.
I don't even bother to keep up anymore, to be honest. It's
It's not an issue for you.
no, I mean, it can be a pain to try, don't get me wrong, to try and, if we have to have a synchronous meeting, it's, I am now actually starting my days at 7 a.m. in my time zone because I want to have more overlap with Europe. But that's a choice that I made for myself, right? But yeah, it makes so much, because then you're not waiting, 6, 10, 12 hours for someone to come back online, to make a decision, to talk about it, things can move quickly. I always like to, and that's, when I touched on the beginning, is understanding the empathy and understanding what you're walking into. When I open my Slack in the morning at 6:45, I can see everything, like almost every channel is illuminated. I could see so much stuff happened between when I got offline and when I got back on.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to be involved in any of that. It's like magic, things happen and move forward when you're sleeping.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you want that? I don't know.
I can also imagine that for the people that have been working in an organization that does Holacracy for a couple of years, if you're used to that, you're ruined for your life.
I realized that actually a couple of years ago. I said to my girlfriend, I was like, like I'm really, really screwed. Like if I ever leave, I either need to start my own business or I need to, I can't, and it can't just be like go to a place that is organized on Holacracy. It has to be remote as well. Like no way I'm going and doing a commute anymore. Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I don't think that's a filter on the job boards currently.
It's not. And LinkedIn only recently started doing remote, before this whole COVID thing. So hopefully, I hope that through all of this, we get through the tough stuff of COVID-19. We're able to have real conversations about what remote work is and what it isn't, and about what different structures of work exist, rather than being in a big rush to go back to the status quo. Like maybe we can use some of these learnings about what we liked and what we didn't like about being in lockdown or working remotely or whatever it is to make things better.
That would be great, right? It sounds like a great opportunity we have right now to do.
I think so. I think that, it's not for everyone, but I do think that we do have an opportunity to have a wider discussion about what work looks like.
Yeah, definitely. Shifting topics a bit. So at Convert, you also preach conscious business.
Yes.
Conscious business is one of your roles at Convert.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that entail?
It entails being the change that we want to see. Very simply, so we have a 3-pronged mission for Convert for conscious business. One of them is for our customers. So we have always grandfather pricing. So we will never fire a customer, for example. I was actually the other day, I was looking at that revenue channel and I saw these code names and I didn't know what they were. And someone told me, oh, yeah, this is the plan where people are paying like $59 a month or something. It's like from whatever.
I actually saw, I think it was a LinkedIn or a tweet from Dennis this week. He said there were actually 2 customers still around that were on the $9 plan.
Yes.
The initial plan
Yes.
from when Convert started.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's.
And they never, so the grandfather idea is that they never get a raise in,
no,
in
never.
their subscription, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you quit, you leave us, you break up with us, it's something else. But no, as long as you're like active and no. So, and I love that, right? So conscious business is a couple of things. So for the customer, it's that grandfather pricing, and for whether you're a single proprietor, you're an agency, that that we always have your back. We're never going to. We're very privacy focused, which I'm sure you know, and probably some of the European listeners know. We really take GDPR and privacy and security compliance to heart. And it's default in our tool too, right? So if you're an American user, you actually have to turn those off rather than having to go into some, nebulous submenu somewhere to try and find the right thing. And then the other 2 components of our conscious business is that environmental. So we're 15x carbon positive, which means that we offset 15 times the carbon that we produce as a company.
Oh, is that the goal of like 15 times? Where did the 15 come from?
Initially it was 1, and then we were like, we could do more than that. Our servers have been, since before I joined Convert, our servers have always been carbon neutral. We then now also offset all the energy that we use for our applications, Convert-wide. We have started to, actually this quarter, we've started to implement kind of a bonus where after your 100th sign-in, we plant 50 trees. So I really love that one. And then, so we did an audit with South Pole last year, and then we offset that amount that we produced. And, as a remote company, it's certainly, as a SaaS business, it's certainly a lot less of a footprint than you would have for, a product-based business.
Yeah. You already have no office, no commutes.
No office, no commute. But, interestingly, our audit does encompass, the energy, the heating. They got really, really detailed. Like I had to make a whole inventory of all the equipment that I bought for work, which in the year that year was actually quite a bit. And, that all was accounted for and offset, right? So I was surprised actually at how detailed it was. And then also, I mean, the other thing we do is, so we have to, every core member of Convert has a company card for their budget, for their role, and for their productivity perk. And we have to send those physical cards all over the world. So we've offset that as well, right? That as conscious business, one of the policies that I put in place for this year is that we no longer send swag to collaborators. So if you remember, I think it was last year, the year before, something, photo shoot, something like that. So that was me saying I'm not buying stuff. We have, for one of our collaborators one of our agencies who lives in actually Spain, I did the work and I had a little questionnaire for him and found out a couple of key things about him. And then I found a local experience for him. So it was actually a biking tour to a horchata factory in Spain. I forget where.
Yeah.
But, finding these kinds of like details, it like speaks to leaving a better experience for the people that you're collaborating with, right? And you're also doing a better thing for the planet as well. And that's really important. The third thing that we do that I'm very, very proud of is that we actually will turn down businesses that don't align with our values as a company. So it's not something I think that a lot of companies talk about. I think some of them do, but I think also, it's kind of this like, a couple of the agencies that I've talked to that we work with say, oh, we kind of do that, but we don't talk about it. Right. And they like the fact that we do it so that then they can say, oh, well, I can't, actually test your site there on Convert because we won't accept it. Right. So gun manufacturers, for example, any site that incites hate or what's the word? Family values. That this is often doublespeak in the U.S. for, sending women back to the 50s and not giving people equal rights. It's like, let's go back there when America was great, these kinds of things. Zoos, for example, is another one that we don't align with. And this is now built into our free trial sign-up page.
Yeah.
It's actually a lot more explicit than it used to be because we don't want our awesome tool to be used for making those organizations better optimized.
So you don't only you don't fire customers by raising prices, but you also don't hire all customers.
Right. And we have had to have
very selective.
Yeah, very selective, right? And the thing is, before I would say that our processes are a lot better optimized internally so that we catch these. There have been times when we've had to have difficult conversations and say, oh, yeah, you've been testing for 3 months on our platform, and we only recently figured out that
what you do.
we don't actually want you,
yeah.
Which is kind of an awkward conversation to have, to put it mildly. But I think that, we all have this choice in terms of how to make money.
Mm-hmm.
We're not a nonprofit. We never suggest that even to our own employees that people work for free or anything like that. And I think that it falls to the conscious business mentality of really doing better and being better. And, maybe there's some people who don't really care, don't really understand what optimization is or A/B testing is. And that's fine. But in this place where those organizations are also powerful, have deep pockets, are really trying to micro-target the audience that's going to bankroll their agendas, I think that we have a unique place to do something about that if it's not something that aligns with us. And those are tough choices.
Online Dialogue is al 10 jaar een toonaangevend CRO-bureau waar mensen, kwaliteit en kennisoverdracht centraal staan. Ze zijn een specialist omdat ze zich alleen richten op optimalisatie en klantgedrag. Het team zorgt voor online groei en waardevolle inzichten in je bezoekers en optimaliseren samen met jou de verschillende onderdelen van je CRO-programma, zoals websites, sales funnels en customer journeys. Voor meer info ga je naar onlinedialogue.nl.
And speaking of being selective, that also applies to the hiring that you do. You already said that is also for Holacracy, hiring process is really important. So I'm curious. I've read a bit about this on the Convert blog. How do you approach this? How do you stay away from having this bias in the hiring process?
Do you want to do a whole episode on this?
Sure.
I'll give you. So I think so for anyone who's listening, who is moving to a remote centered team or moving to 100% remote team, I think the same holds true for them. And that is, think about what your values are and what's important to you, and make your applicants self-select out if they are not the right fit. It's not about getting 1,000 applicants for a job. It's about getting 10 good ones. So hiring takes a lot of time, and onboarding takes even more. It's really expensive, and in a lot of cases, very mind-numbing process. To be honest, it's so one of the things that we do, because we have this blend of remote and holacracy that's super important, is we have this we require audio, video, and written answers to questions in the first round.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're a developer. It doesn't matter, which role you're applying for. If you cannot show self-actualization, one of the questions is, tell me about a time that you messed up and what you learned from it or something. It's a real soft pitch of a question, right? You'd be amazed how many people either won't or can't answer this in a way that you'd think would show that they have read the job description or read about Convert or something like that. The other video question that we ask that I think is really great for us, because we are a default video on in terms of communication. 2 minutes to record a video, original content only, and teach us something we probably don't know. So I don't care what it is. It could be anything. It could be related to your role. It could not be. And you get some really interesting content. Someone wrote us a song once. Someone showed us how to brew the perfect cup of coffee. Someone went on did a tutorial on their secret passion was continuity in movies. And,
yes.
But, you have this kind of question. You get a real sense for how people engage in a remote environment on things they're passionate about and how they are articulate, right? How they articulate themselves, right? We don't care about the accents, or if you have super command of English. That's actually not really important.
That's what I also found interesting to read, because you require this the video and the audio, but you're also trying to eliminate bias from the process. So how on earth, if you can imagine you have a bias against someone from a certain part of the world, or against a certain bias, or a certain language maybe, or accent that someone has. You already assume things when you hear a certain accent maybe, or the way how someone looks on video, and you want to prevent that in your hire. You guys try to do that, but how do you do that with video and audio?
So the first thing that first round, the only person who sees those 3 items is the for me, for example, when I was HR check, would have been me. The actual role that's being filled in the circle of marketing, the marketing hiring person would never see that information. As soon as these people check all the boxes for round 1 of the application process, they get anonymized. So, for example...
So round 1 would be more a general fit with the company that someone in HR could assess. And then you move on to the actually job-specific part that is anonymized.
Exactly. So everyone gets a code name. Sometimes it's spices. I used to use trees. We've used dog breeds, but we discovered that actually introduced bias, because people would look up what the dog breed, if it was cute or not. It was I really like, the German Shepherd, but it's not as cute as the Dachshund, So
it's the Belgian Shepherds, damn it. Yeah.
Right. I know, right? So it's, so we go through, those get anonymized. We have a virtual assistant, and their job is to go through and black out anything, any preposition, okay, any reference to a company name, any location, citizenship. I mean, in every piece of collateral that they give us, it's very time consuming. And they do an excellent job of that. Then what happens is the video and the audio recordings go through AI and they get transcribed and everything gets removed from there. So then they get passed on to the circle that's doing the hiring, and they can look at the other information, because those 3 questions that I talked about are just part of a series of other questions that they'd be asked.
Yeah.
And they can then say, oh, yes, I like these answers to these technical questions, or, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But they actually don't know the gender, citizenship, anything for the candidate. So, yeah, it's, but it gets us a diverse team. And I think that, that's why we ended up with 10 time zones. It's, it's also too, like, I don't make so it kind of drives me bananas when I see these job postings that say, you must be located in Central European time. Why? If I'm willing to work that time zone, does it matter that I'm located there?
Even if it's in my night?
Maybe I'm a night owl.
Yeah.
Maybe I take care of my aging parents, and actually the shift that I would love to work is, So I don't assume to make decisions for people about what is right. If I have a time zone requirement, then certainly I put that in there, but I don't care where the person lives.
Does it always work? Or have you had the situation where you said, okay, in hindsight, we could have known this if we hadn't blacked out all this information?
I'm trying to think. It's.
I mean, you obviously you don't convert isn't hundreds and hundreds of people, so you don't have a huge pool, huge sample size. But
no, I think that definitely some of the mistakes that I encountered at the beginning is that I didn't put values testing early enough. So it was much more focused on skills. And then we'd realize that someone made it to round 3 and they actually weren't aligned with us in terms of values and vision for the company. Yeah. And then it was like I had just wasted 4 weeks of my time trying to get someone through a pipeline. So I realized that actually I'd rather take someone who's aligned, whose maybe skills are a little less.
Yeah.
Because we know that
it's harder to change the alignment than to upgrade the skills.
Well, that's it. And one of the things that we're constantly looking for is someone who has this learning mindset. Through the process, we're always looking to see, are they self-starters? Are they creative problem solvers? Are they goal-oriented? What are their people skills like? Do they have empathy? These kinds of things, which we know makes good holacracy practitioners and great remote workers. So if you get to the end and you are missing a year of experience for something, or you'll have a deficit somewhere, you check all those other boxes, which makes it really, really easy for you to be a great contributor rather than someone who is an information silo, who doesn't play nice with other people, who has no kind of collaboration or empathy skills. Like that stuff in any environment, whether it's remote or not, is super toxic and difficult to work with. Who wants that, right?
Werk je aan een front-end AB-test en heb je ook last van de bekende flikkeringen in je variaties? Dit kan natuurlijk je testresultaten beïnvloeden en een positief testresultaat neutraliseren. Probeer Convert.com's AB-testing software die Smart Insert technologie gebruikt en die flikkeringen voorkomt. 5 keer snellere support via 24/7 chat, de helft goedkoper en het bedrijf is daarnaast maar liefst 15 keer carbon positive. Je doet dus jezelf, je bedrijf en de volgende generatie een plezier door hun website convert.com/sneller eens te bezoeken.
What are the checkboxes you need for people to match them with Holacracy in general? What are good character traits for that?
I think that high EQ is really helpful. Certainly, the orientation, the goal orientation, the ability to see details, understand concepts as well.
How long does it take, on average, people that are not used to Holacracy? How long does it take them to adjust, or how long does it take you to get them to adjust?
It's not black and white. I think there's no real answer. I mean, it's Holacracy is an evolution. It's like I believe that the organization of Holacracy One that runs the teaching and the resource center for Holacracy implementation, they have an evolution of Holacracy, and it's like this huge. It's a very pretty graph, which I could send you, and it has these different stages. And it's like what you see is a cross convert. It's like the further we get into this adoption, I see that where I thought we were in terms of, people or hiring or process improvement, maybe I thought we were further ahead. We're actually further back. I think that it changes. It's a different answer depending on cultural background. Plays a role for sure. Even though we're hiring for specific traits, then it's also we have people who what I call our legacy members of the team who've been with the team since the beginning and are still adapting to this new way of working and certainly do an excellent job. There's still deficits there, right?
Does everyone start with a Holacracy course? Or is that part of the onboarding? Or
yeah, actually we do. We start with a couple of. So the other thing that we do that I think is not just good for Holacracy and remote work, but I think is really good for any type of company, is that we do 90 days in the beginning, and it's very, very clear. Like it's a 90-day contract. And it's an opportunity for us to try it out. And both of us, it's like you can kind of think that you can suck it up for 90 days, no matter what it is. If there's an end in sight, it's like
3 months. That's a long time.
It's a long time, but there's an exit, right? And know that it's going to be done on this date. So if you really hate Convert and you don't like us, it's like you could say thanks, but no thanks. And we've had people do it. And that's okay.
Can you say the percentage of people that go beyond the 90 days, either from their side or from your side? But what's the percentage that goes?
I think it's about 9. It's over 90.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's over 90. We actually had really high churn for people who in the beginning for hires. And it was pretty bad for retention and implementing all these things that I just talked to you about. We've gone from that to over 90%. So even though this hiring process, some listeners may say, my God, that's a lot of time and investment and everything. It's like...
It pays off after 90 days, yeah.
Yeah, it does. It pays off. And it's like you think about all that time that you spend and it's like, 90 days is a long time. But especially if you have, a lot of this is new, right, for a lot of people. And we don't dive super deep into Holacracy in the beginning. We kind of give them like a taste of what it is and what that looks like. People get a lot of transparency, and you have to make sure it's good for both parties, right? I think it's arrogant to think that as an employer that we're great for everyone.
Yeah,
it's not the case.
So for both the conscious business part and Holacracy, what are the things you're trying to change or improve in the coming 12 months?
So in the next 3 to 12 months, we're focused on a couple of different areas. For people, feedback internally, and having a stronger, more dynamic culture of feedback, And that goes to how you ask questions, whether it's in a meeting or one-on-one, to, like you talked about in the very beginning, maybe asking for input or consensus, what that looks like. And in a multicultural team, that can be difficult. So that's one of the things that we're working on. As a sales and success team, we have shifted to a strategy of teams over tools. So in this COVID environment, we've actually seen a real uptick in enterprises coming to look at Convert to explore us as an option, because we have a really robust tool. And this is, Holacracy is actually giving us the leverage to be able to be agile in this, right? So we can change some of our processes internally on how we are flexible in taking over customers, how we can, offer migrations and things like that. And then also what that process and that feedback looks like from the customer or from a developer that's using the tool, so that we can be better placed strategically, right? So I think that communication and feedback is really the key component for we're getting prepared now, but for Q3, Q4, and then in 2021.
Yeah, hopefully it's all going up from here.
I hope so. I think as you as an optimizer, you've probably seen some changes in the market too, right? It's
a lot of them. Yeah.
What's your most amazing one that you've seen, that were a surprising one?
That bread baking machines are now in the top 5. Didn't see that coming. I maybe should have, but I didn't see it coming.
I agree. And kombucha as well. Like,
I guess everyone wants to be more self-sufficient, but I guess that's a good thing, right?
I think it is a good thing.
Yeah, I'm trying to do more gardening, but my tomatoes already died today, so I'm not off to a great start. But I'm trying.
Oh well, we did a good job of feeding our squirrel population over the winter with our bird feeder, so I am sure that anything we try and grow this summer is going to get eaten very quickly.
Yeah, well, but you can eat squirrels then.
I'm a vegetarian.
That doesn't work. Maybe you can try to find their burrows and eat, and then you can eat nuts.
Right.
Maybe you can find some nice recipes for that.
Maybe I'll sell them online.
They can collect them. We're definitely running out of time right now. So my final question for you would be, are there any books you'd like to tip to our audience on these topics?
Yes, actually, there are a few that I would suggest. And I think one of my favorite books that really changed the way that I think about teams and feedback is, there are two. So Radical Candor by Kim Scott, a really excellent book. It really challenges you to think about how you give and take feedback as a leader. The other one is Reboot by Jerry Colonna, really looking and challenging leaders to work on themselves first rather than their organizations, and how your relationship with power, money, authority, all these things need to be dealt with in a way, and it will really help you be a better leader. So I think there's a very interesting setup for his book. He gives some checklists and things like this. And I would also recommend for any teams that are listening, or in agencies that maybe you're working online now, but you're actually part co-located and part remote. There's a really good book by Lizette Sutherland, who's actually based, I think, in Amsterdam.
Okay.
It's called Work Together Anywhere. And she talks a lot about, she does workshops and everything like that, but she wrote a really great book on how to do great work in remote teams. So this is like fully outside of Holacracy, but really how to, and as a manager, how to make that work productively. So those are my three top reads.
Okay, definitely add those to the show notes. Thank you so much, Morgan, for telling us more about the way Holacracy and remote working can work in these times, and can be very beneficial for the company and the employees, and have a nice working environment. And to hear that even, or not even, but in times like this, I think it's great to hear success stories for companies that have been doing remote for a long time. And spread the word. This can be normal. This can work very well.
Yes.
So I think that's great to hear.
It can, and I would just encourage your listeners to, think differently about the way that they work and how they can work. When we get out of crisis mentality, the kids are not going to be home. You're not going to have two people.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
Yeah. So it's not crisis mentality. It's real remote work. This isn't real remote work. And I think that thinking about that and really, scaling your organization or your business to leverage what remote work has to offer is really beneficial. I'm really happy that you gave me the opportunity to speak to your community.
That's very true what you said. This is not remote work. I've been remote working for over 1.5 years now, and this doesn't feel like normal to me.
It's not.
especially because of the kid from 1.5 years old that is now continuously at home. That makes it very difficult. It's not normal.
No.
So yeah, Morgan, thank you so much. I think this is great content for everyone interested in this topic, and I think a lot of freelancers and I think a lot of CRO agencies already trying. Of course, now they're forced remote, but we're already into hiring at least a couple people in their workforce remotely. Mm-hmm. So I think this is going to be very interesting. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And that brings us to our COVID-19 data trends and updates segment. Content Square analyzed some fresh data from their massive and diverse client base to share some industry insights with us. Here's Sahana Sekaran, Senior Marketing Manager from Content Square.
Many consumers in the world are entering a second week of relaxed restrictions, with non-essential businesses tentatively opening their doors again to the public. Stores, restaurants, bars, hair salons and gyms are open for business in many US states and in Europe, albeit at reduced capacity, and consumers are starting to engage once again with physical shops and services. We've been analysing digital consumer behaviour for over 13 weeks now to get a sense of how the unfolding crisis is reshaping the way people browse and connect with businesses online. To really understand the impact of coronavirus on e-commerce, we've been comparing key metrics every week, such as traffic, transactions, and engagement, with data from the period immediately preceding the introduction of quarantine measures in the West, which is essentially the first 6 weeks of the year, which we call the reference period. Here are some of the insights we surfaced this week. So firstly, are we starting to see what the new normal looks like for the digital space? Interestingly, traffic has been stable for 2 weeks now, which makes sense with businesses starting to reopen in some regions of the world. Transactions, similarly, were down slightly for the second week in a row, dropping by 2.6% from the previous week. However, despite this recent slowdown, digital traffic is still 30% higher than pre-quarantine levels, and transactions across industries also increasing by 40% over the same period. When we look at customer engagement online, which is things like time spent, number of sessions, it's been dropping quite fast since last April and is now -6% below normal levels. But on a positive note, the conversion rate across industries is climbing steadily and is still 10% higher today than it was before stores closed their doors. Secondly, some positive news for the travel industry. This week's biggest growth was recorded by the travel industry, which saw a 21% increase in the volume of visits this past week. Transactions were also up a massive 40%, accelerating 4 weeks of improvement for the industry. Although the volume of transactions remains 75% below pre-quarantine level, there seems to be a clear trend towards recovery. Engagement has also been climbing steadily since the first week of April, as restrictions ease and consumers' thoughts turn once again to their summer holiday plans. Our breakdown into sub-industries shows that camping vacations are doing particularly well, boasting the highest volume of traffic of all travel sectors. That's including air, train travel, hotels, package holidays. In fact, camping vacation sites are now seeing just over half the traffic that they enjoyed pre-quarantine. And today, these sites are seeing 57% of the number of transactions they were recording before the introduction of lockdown measures, a huge surge from the 17% they observed in the previous week. With a lot of remaining uncertainty over risks and restrictions, consumers appear to be much less willing to commit to air travel and are therefore favouring domestic destinations instead. With many hotels closed and social distancing still in place all over the world, camping stands out as the most convenient and as well safe solution, offering more possibilities for isolation than any other types of trips. Unsurprisingly, car rental and train travel sites are also doing much better than air travel in terms of actual sales, although the increase of traffic to air travel sites, which now stands at 50% of pre-quarantine level, suggests that consumers are starting to dream of their escape. Lastly, the grocery industry is down this week, but it's up again for sports retailers. Global traffic to grocery sites was down 18% from the previous week, although a closer look at the specific geos tells two different stories. In the UK and the US, visits were slightly up, while France saw a significant slump in traffic, going from 244% of regular traffic back down to 162%. The relaxing of lockdown measures over the past 10 days mean that French residents no longer need a special permit to leave the house, and car journeys up to 60 miles an hour allowed, making a dent in consumers' reliance on digital services to get their grocery shopping done. This staggered return to activities outside the home perhaps explains the higher number of consumers browsing sports gear. Transactions on sporting goods sites didn't budge much from the previous week, although traffic was up 7%, as warmer days and fewer rules on venturing out come into play. That's all from us this week. If you want to see KPIs for your industry, be sure to check out Content Square's COVID-19 e-commerce impact data hub. It's updated every Monday with the freshest behavioral data across all sectors.
Thank you, Sahana, and if you're lazy like me, just check out the show notes for a direct link to the data hub. This was episode 22 from season 2 of Zero Cafe with Morgan Legge from Convert.com. In next week's episode, I'll be talking to authors Bas Wouters and Joris Groen from the Online Influence Institute, and we'll be talking about their new book in Dutch. Talk to you next week, and always be optimizing.